Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Pace, and I am doing my local water issue project on the invasive species of the Asian carp in the Mississippi River. I am in the St. Louis area, just about 28, 30 miles away from St. Louis, and so this will be my project. So first, I'll talk about the Asian carp and actually define what an invasive species is. I'll talk a little bit about the different species, bighead, black, brass, and silver, and then also their negative impacts on ecosystems. I'll talk about how they were introduced, and there are a few different theories on that. What is being done about the problem right now. There's a few different things that are happening to try to fix the issue. What will happen if the problem is not resolved? There are human and environmental and economic problems with that. So I'll talk about that. And then also just a few ways of how you or I can actually help. Okay, so the actual definition of an invasive species, according to the National Park Service, is a species that are not native to an ecosystem and cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. And invasive species can actually be any type of living organism, actually. So plants, I know bamboo is pretty invasive, insects, and then bacteria. And in this case, we'll be talking about the aquatic version of an invasive species with the Asian carp. So here are the 4 different species of carp. The first one we have is called the bighead, and its body is long and narrow. Color is dark coloration on the sides mostly. And the top picture there, you can see it looks kind of like it's upside down in a way because the eyeballs are so low set on the head, but that's how they look. It's kind of different. The second species is black carp. It's also long, but it's more muscular, so it's thick, it's heavier, and it's got that really neat looking red belly over there on the right side. The third one is grass. It has a compressed body, so it's a little shorter, and it's a part of the minnow family in a way, so it's kind of like a larger minnow. The color is olive or brown, so it's got that kind of green tinge to it. And then the bottom one is a pretty bad one, but it's the silver carp, and it's narrow body. If you can look on the picture in the bottom, you can see it's got an upturned mouth, and the color of it, obviously very silver whenever they're young, and then when they start to get older, their back actually turns a little green color, but their belly remains pretty silver and shiny. So some of the negative impacts they have on the ecosystem, especially here locally in the Mississippi River, which is about 3 miles away from my house, the carp have become so abundant, the native fish are completely outnumbered. So as it says here, the bass and the crappie are being pushed out of their natural environment because there are so many carp. The carp are devouring the natural food sources and the plankton. So native fish, the mollusks that are native to the Mississippi River and in the Missouri area are becoming endangered because they don't have any sustenance or food to eat off of. The carp are also depleting native plants and algae, and so that natural filter system that's in the river is completely depleting. So water quality is actually deteriorating and becoming an issue. So this is kind of interesting, the different theories on how the Asian carp were introduced. One of the theories is that they were imported by farmers from China in the 1960s and early 1970s to keep fish farms and other ponds clean. However, the fish were not properly contained and, quote, jumped ship to Missouri. And later you'll see what the jumped ship, it's kind of funny. Another theory is that about 50 years ago, they came in from China with the hope that they would clean waters of unwanted materials, including sewage lagoons. Some escaped from Arkansas and soon found their way into the Mississippi River. And then another last theory, they were imported to control aquatic vegetation in ponds to control plankton blooms, then were accidentally introduced in a cargo shipment. And the cargo shipment one I think is kind of interesting. It seems far-fetched, but I guess not. It in a cargo shipment is just kind of interesting to me. Okay, so what is actually being done about the issue? Here are a few things that are going on. The USGS has been researching the carp eggs, and the carp can actually produce 500,000 eggs or 1 million in a lifetime. They found that the eggs actually need what they call Goldilocks like river conditions. So if the river is too harsh, then the eggs will be damaged and die, or if it's too soft, then again the eggs can't develop properly. And so the USGS is hoping to be able to exploit water dynamics in a way of limiting the amount of eggs that actually hatch. And then another way, it's called the Chinese technique, also known as the unified method. And in 2018, Creve Coeur Lake was systematically herding fish with the sound and electricity, then catching them in large nets. They removed about 47,000 or 119 tons, and that is a lot of fish. My fiance actually, just going through this project, told me that he took part in a Chinese technique adventure one time, and that it was actually a lot of fun and cool. But another thing is called the Perfect Catch, and it was a media campaign back in 2021 that they were trying to commercialize the carp as rebranding it as food for human consumption, because right now it's just being used mostly as pet food and fertilizer. And last one on here, Redneck Fishing Tournament. And this was a fishing competition that was introduced in 2006. It's in a certain amount of time, you have to catch as many silver carp as you can. And an interesting thing here, no fishing poles are allowed. And again, I'll get back to that. So what will happen if this issue is not fixed? Well, if the invasive species can't be contained, then there will be an increased risk to human safety, obsolescence of native plants that provide spawning and nursery areas of native fish species, and negative economic impacts on communities that rely on commercial fishing industry. Now, quite scary. As of November 2020, carp have decreased native fish populations like bass and crappie over 90% in some areas on the Mississippi River. And that's pretty daunting for a statistic. Okay, so here is a clip. It's about 15 seconds or so. I said I would come back to the jumping ship and human safety hazard and that type of thing. So hopefully this will explain a little bit more. So that's what these carp do. And us ourselves, we've actually been out on the boat in the Mississippi and had one come jumping across the boat, and my mother-in-law went to punch it basically to get it out of our way. But it's pretty scary. It's entertaining, but it's scary. So ways to help. Of course, there is an option of volunteerism, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is always looking for volunteers, especially because they're doing a lot of the surveys concerning carp population. The U.S. Forest Service also, they're doing a lot of research as far as the carp population and on the migration of the carp within the Mississippi River. Conservation groups. Here locally, we have the Missouri Department of Conservation, and then on a national level, you have the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation that's also looking for volunteers. You can also report a sighting to your local Fish and Wildlife. They like to at least just take note, even if there's been a sighting of a carp in the area, and that way they can just update their data and stay on top of things. But okay, so then that is my project on a local water issue. Here's my bibliography. But thank you.